Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Our first story is titled,
My brother tried to use my identity to escape his debts. My name is Miguel, and I'm a 28-year-old software developer living in Seattle. I've always been the responsible one in my family, especially compared to my older brother, Joseph. He is 31 and has always been the wild child, getting into trouble and expecting others to bail him out. I was always the more responsible one and the gifted child. It all started about 6 months ago when I got a strange call from a collection agency. The woman on the phone was demanding payment for a credit card balance of over $15,000. I was confused because I have always been careful with my finances, and I knew I did not owe anything like that. I'm sorry, there must be some type of mistake, I told her. I don't have any outstanding debts. She sighed, clearly frustrated. Mr. Miguel Townsend, we have records of multiple missed payments on your Platinum Rewards card. If you don't make arrangements to pay, we'll have to take further action. My heart started racing. I don't even have a Platinum Rewards card. Can you give me more information about this account? As she read off the details, including the home address and phone number associated with the account, I felt sick to my stomach. It was my old address, the one I shared with Joseph before I moved out 3 years ago. Ma'am, I think my identity has been stolen. That's not my account. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I see. In that case, Mr. Townsend, I recommend you file a police report and contact the credit bureau immediately. We'll put a hold on this account for now, but you'll need to prove it wasn't you who opened it. After hanging up, I sat there in shock for a few minutes. Then, anger started to build. I knew exactly who was behind this, but I did not want to believe it. I called Joseph. Hey, little bro, what's up? He sounded cheerful, like nothing was wrong. Joseph, did you open a credit card in my name? I asked bluntly. There was a long pause. What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? I explained about the call from the collection agency. As I spoke, I could hear Joseph's breathing change. He was getting nervous. After a few more seconds of silence, he spoke up. Look, Miguel, I can explain, he finally said. I was in a tight spot, and I knew you had great credit. I was going to pay it off before you found out, I swear. I could not believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? That is identity theft, Joseph. It's a felony. Come on, we're brothers, he pleaded. I'll pay it off, I promise. Just give me a little time. I was furious. How? You can barely keep a job for more than a few months. Where are you going to get $15,000? I've got some opportunities coming up, he said vaguely. Just trust me, okay? To say I was pissed was an understatement. He did not even seem remorseful or sorry. I laughed bitterly. Trust you? After this? No way. I'm reporting this to the police. Wait, Joseph shouted. Please, Miguel, you cannot do that. I will go to jail. Maybe you should have thought of that before stealing my identity. I snapped and hung up. My hands were shaking as I called the police non-emergency line to report the identity theft. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic and walked me through the process of filing a report. She also advised me to contact the 3 major credit bureaus to place a fraud alert on my credit reports. As I went through these steps, I discovered that the Platinum Rewards card was not the only account Joseph had opened in my name. There was also a personal loan for $10,000 and 2 more credit cards with balances totaling another $8,000. All told, he had racked up over $33,000 in debt using my identity. I felt violated and betrayed. This was not just a little borrowing between brothers. This was a deliberate, ongoing fraud that could have serious consequences for my financial future. I knew I had to take action to protect myself, even if it meant potentially sending my own brother to jail. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and stress. I had to provide documentation to prove that I had not opened these accounts, including proof of where I lived and worked during the times they were opened. I also had to file an identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission. Throughout this process, Joseph kept calling and texting, alternating between begging me to drop the charges and promising to pay everything back. I ignored most of his messages, but finally, I agreed to meet him in person at a local coffee shop. When I arrived, Joseph looked terrible. His usual stylish hair was messy, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He jumped up as soon as he saw me. Miguel, thank God you came. We need to talk about this. I sat down across from him, keeping my face neutral. All right, talk. Joseph leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Look, I know I messed up, but I have a plan to fix everything. I just need a little more time. I raised an eyebrow. A plan? Like all your other get-rich-quick schemes that never pan out? He shook his head. No, this is different. I have a friend who is starting a business. He has promised me a management position. Once I get my first few paychecks, I can start paying off the debt. I could not believe what I was hearing. Joseph, Do you even understand the seriousness of what you've done? This is not just about the money. You committed a crime, multiple crimes, and you did it to your own brother. Joseph's face fell. I know, and I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just in a tight spot, and I thought I could fix it before you found out. But you didn't fix it, I said, my anger rising. Instead, you kept digging the hole deeper. Do you have any idea what this has done to my credit? To my peace of mind? I can't trust my own brother anymore. Tears welled up in Joseph's eyes. Please, Miguel, I'm begging you. Do not press charges. I'll do anything to make this right. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered all the times in the past when he had promised to change, only to fall back into his old habits. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Joseph, but I can't just let this go. You need to face the consequences of your actions. Maybe that's the only way you'll learn. Joseph's face hardened. So that's it? You're going to just throw your own brother to the wolves? I stood up shaking my head. No, Joseph, you threw yourself to the wolves when you decided to steal my identity. I'm just refusing to jump in after you this time. As I walked away, I could hear Joseph calling after me, but I did not look back. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew it was necessary. The next few months were a roller coaster. The police investigation moved forward, and Joseph was eventually arrested and charged with identity theft and fraud. Seeing his mugshot in the local news was surreal. It was like looking at a stranger, wearing my brother's face. Our parents were devastated. Mom called me, crying and begging me to drop the charges. He's your brother, Miguel. Family should stick together, she said. I tried to explain my position. Mom, I love Joseph, but he needs to learn that his actions have consequences. This is not the first time he has done something like this. It is just the first time he has gotten caught. Dad was more understanding. He called me separately and said, I know this must be hard for you, son, but you are doing the right thing. Joseph needs to face this head on if he's ever going to change. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the fallout from identity theft. Even though I had reported the fraud, it was a long and frustrating process to get everything sorted out. I had to provide countless documents to prove that I was not responsible for the debts that Joseph had incurred in my name. One particularly stressful day, I was on the phone with yet another credit card company, trying to explain the situation for what felt like the 100th time. I understand that the account is in my name, but I didn't open it, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. My brother stole my identity. I have already filed a police report and an FTC report. The representative on the other end sounded skeptical. Sir, you have to understand, we hear stories like this all the time from people trying to avoid paying their debts. I felt my blood pressure rising. I'm not trying to avoid anything. I am the victim here. My own brother stole my identity, and now I'm the one being treated like a criminal? After being put on hold and transferred multiple times, I finally reached someone who understood the situation. They agreed to put a hold on the account while they investigated further. As I hung up the phone, I felt drained. This whole ordeal was taking a toll on me, both emotionally and physically. I was having trouble sleeping, constantly worried about what other financial bombs might be waiting to explode in my face. My girlfriend, Christy, was incredibly supportive throughout all of this. She listened patiently when I needed to vent and offered practical help when I felt overwhelmed by all the paperwork and phone calls. One night, as we were sitting on the couch after yet another stressful day of dealing with creditors, Christy turned to me with a serious look on her face. Miguel, I know this is hard, but I'm really proud of you for standing up for yourself, she said, squeezing my hand. You're doing the right thing, even though it's not easy. I smiled weakly. Thanks. Sometimes I wonder, though, am I being too harsh? Should I have given Joseph another chance? Christy shook her head firmly. No. You have given him chances before, and he has always taken advantage of your kindness. This time, he crossed the line. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. Deep down, I knew she was right, but it did not make the situation any easier to deal with. As the weeks turned into months, things slowly started to improve. The credit bureaus finally removed the fraudulent accounts from my credit report, and my credit score began to recover. The constant calls from debt collectors tapered off as the various companies acknowledged the identity theft. Joseph's case worked its way through the legal system. He ended up pleading guilty to multiple counts of identity theft and fraud. The prosecutor agreed to recommend a reduced sentence in exchange for his guilty plea and full admission of what he had done. The day of Joseph's sentencing hearing arrived, and I decided to attend. As I sat in the courtroom watching my brother stand before the judge in an ill-fitting suit, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief that this chapter was finally ending. The judge looked sternly at Joseph. Mr. Townsend, you stand before this court having pled guilty to multiple felonies. Your actions not only violated the law, but also betrayed the trust of your own brother. Do you have anything to say before I pass the sentence? Joseph looked pale and nervous. He cleared his throat and spoke in a shaky voice. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I've hurt my brother and my family, and I'm truly sorry. The judge nodded, then turned to me. Mr. Miguel Townsend, as the victim in this case, you have the right to make a statement if you wish. I stood up, my heart pounding. I had thought long and hard about what I wanted to say. Your Honor, what my brother did has caused me significant harm, both financially and emotionally. However, I do not wish to see him rot in jail. What I want is for him to understand the seriousness of his actions and to make genuine changes in his life. I hope that whatever sentence you impose will serve that purpose. The judge considered for a moment, then addressed Joseph again. Mr. Townsend, taking into account your guilty plea and your brother's statement, I sentence you to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You will also be required to pay full restitution for the debts you incurred in your brother's name. Additionally, you must complete a financial responsibility course and undergo counseling. As the bailiff led Joseph away, he looked back at me. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw a mix of remorse and gratitude in his gaze. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life and my credit. It was a slow process, but gradually things improved. I set up multiple layers of protection for my identity, including credit freezes and monitoring services. The experience had me hyper vigilant about my personal information. Joseph wrote to me from prison a few times. His letters were full of apologies and promises to change. I read them but did not reply at first. I needed time to process everything that had happened. About 6 months into Joseph's sentence, I finally decided to visit him. As I sat across from him in the prison visiting room, separated by a thick pane of glass, I hardly recognized my brother. He looked thinner, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by a subdued, almost humble air. Miguel, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I can't tell you how sorry I am for everything. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. Joseph continued. I know I've said this before, but I mean it this time. I am changing. I've been taking classes here, anger management and financial literacy. I'm even working on getting my GED. That's good, Joseph, I said cautiously. I hope you stick with it. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I will, I promise. And as soon as I get out, I can work. Every spare penny is going towards paying you back. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I want to try and make things right. We talked for a while longer, about his life in prison, about our family. It was not an easy conversation. But by the end, I felt a small glimmer of hope that just maybe this experience had finally gotten through to Joseph. As I left the prison that day, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead would not be easy, but at least now it felt like we're moving in the right direction. Over the next year, I continued to work on securing my finances and rebuilding my credit. It was a slow process, but I was making progress. I even started a blog about identity theft prevention, sharing my experiences and the lessons I had learned to help others avoid similar situations. And Joseph continued to write regularly, keeping me updated on his progress in prison. He completed his GED and was taking additional classes in computer skills. He also joined a support group for people with addiction issues, something he had never admitted to struggling with before. As his release date approached, I found myself facing a difficult decision. He had asked if he could stay with me while he got back on his feet. Part of me wanted to help him, to believe that he had really changed, but another part was still weary, remembering all the times he had let me down before. I discussed it with Sarah, who had been my rock throughout this whole ordeal. What do you think I should do? I asked her one night as we sat on our balcony, watching the sunset over the Seattle skyline. Christy took a sip of her wine and considered for a moment. I think you need to do what feels right to you, Miguel. You have come so far in setting boundaries and standing up for yourself. Whatever you decide, make sure it's because it's what you want, not because you feel obligated. I nodded, grateful for her insight. After much thought, I decided to help Joseph find a halfway house instead of having him live with me. It would provide him with structure and support while still allowing him to work on rebuilding our relationship. The day Joseph was released, I picked him up from the prison. As he walked out carrying a small bag with his belongings, I was struck by how different he looked. Gone was the carefree party boy I had known. In his place was a more serious, thoughtful-looking man. Thanks for coming, Joseph said as he got into my car. I wasn't sure you would. I started the engine and pulled away from the prison. You're still my brother, Joseph. That hasn't changed, even if our relationship has. We drove in silence for a while before Joseph spoke again. I know I have a lot to make up for. I want you to know that I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I glanced at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. I appreciate that, Joseph. It is going to take time, though. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. He nodded. I know. I'm prepared for that. I'm just grateful for the chance to try. As we arrived at the halfway house, I helped Joseph carry his things inside. Before I left, he turned to me with a serious expression. Miguel, I know I've said this before, but I need you to hear it again. I am sorry. What I did to you was unforgivable, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. I felt a lump in my throat. Thank you, Joseph. That means a lot. As I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the past year and a half. It had been one of the most challenging periods of my life, but also one of the most transformative. I had learned to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, and to protect my own interest, even when it was painful to do so. The road ahead would not be easy. Rebuilding trust with Joseph would take time, and there was always the possibility that he could slip back into his old habits. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about our relationship. When I got home, Christy was waiting for me. How did it go? She asked, pulling me into a hug. I sighed, leaning into her embrace. It was okay. Better than I expected. Joseph seems different, more mature. I'm still worried. I won't get my hopes up for anything, but hopefully he's finally growing up. Christy smiled. That's good. Remember, though, you do not have to figure everything out right away. Take it one day at a time. I nodded, grateful once again for her support. You're right. One day at a time. Here are my thoughts about the story. It's devastating when your own family sabotages you and stabs you in the back for their own personal gain. If I were Miguel, I don't think I would have it in me to forgive Joseph. I mean, over $30K in debt? That's outrageous. And I also don't know anyone who can do that to their own family. What do you folks think?
And now, guys, we will move on to the second story of the video. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it so far. The story starts like this.
My husband's best friend tried to frame me for theft. It's been a wild ride, but I want to share what happened to me in hopes that it might help someone else who finds themselves in a similar situation. My husband James and I have been married for 5 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. He's always been my rock, kind, supportive, and level-headed. About a year into our relationship, I met his best friend from high school, Mark. James and Mark had been inseparable since their freshman year of high school. They bonded over their shared love of sports, video games, and comic books. Throughout their teen years, they were the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and had countless inside jokes. They went to prom together when neither could get dates, supported each other through family troubles, and even chose the same college so they could be roommates. James often regaled me with stories of their high school hijinks, sneaking out to midnight movie premieres, road trips to concerts, and epic prank wars with the rival high school. It was clear that Mark had been a huge part of James' life, and their bond seemed unbreakable. When I first met Mark, he regaled me with embarrassing stories about James from their college days. He told me about the times James got so nervous before a big presentation that he threw up on his professor's shoes, and how James once accidentally dyed all his clothes pink in the laundry. Mark had a way of telling these stories that was both affectionate and gently mocking, and I can see why James valued their friendship so much. At first, Mark seemed like a great guy. He was outgoing and charismatic, always cracking jokes and livening up any gathering. James clearly valued their friendship, and I was happy that my husband had such a close buddy. Mark was a constant presence in our lives, coming over for dinner, joining us for movie nights, even tagging along on weekend trips sometimes. I remember one particular camping trip where Mark's presence really added to the experience. He was full of energy, always ready with a funny story or a new game to play around the campfire. He taught us how to identify different bird calls and showed off his impressive skills at skipping stones across the lake. At one point, he even saved our dinner by MacGyvering a makeshift grill when our portable stove broke down. James and Mark had a tradition of watching the Super Bowl together every year, complete with ridiculous bets and over-the-top snack spreads. They would spend weeks trash-talking each other's teams and planning elaborate viewing parties. I always enjoyed seeing how animated and carefree James became during these events, as if Mark's presence allowed him to tap into a more youthful, unburdened version of himself. Looking back, there were some red flags I should have noticed earlier. Mark could be a bit possessive of James' time and attention. He'd make little comments about how James didn't hang out with him as much since getting married. If James and I had plans, Mark would try to insert himself or guilt-trip James into changing them. But I brushed it off as harmless at the time. I remember one incident. About a year into our marriage, James and I had planned a romantic weekend getaway to celebrate our anniversary. The night before we were set to leave, Mark showed up at our door, clearly drunk and upset. He was rambling about how his girlfriend had broken up with him and how he needed his best friend. James, being the kind person he is, spent hours comforting Mark, and ended up canceling our trip to stay with him for the weekend. I was disappointed, but I understood. That's just the kind of friend James was, and I admired his loyalty. There were other small moments that should have given me pause. Sometimes, when James and I would be cuddling on the couch during movie nights, I'd catch Mark giving us strange looks. He'd quickly mask it with a joke or a smile, but there was something off about his expression. And whenever James talked about our future plans, buying a house, having kids, Mark would get quiet and withdrawn. Despite these occasional oddities, I genuinely liked Mark and appreciated his friendship with James. He was always ready to help out when we needed it. Whether it was moving furniture or giving James career advice, he remembered our birthdays and always brought thoughtful gifts. And most importantly, he seemed to make James happy. I figured that any small issues were outweighed by the positive aspects of their friendship. Things started to shift about 6 months ago. James got a big promotion at work that came with a significant pay raise. We were thrilled. It meant we could finally start saving for a down payment on a house. But I noticed Mark's attitude change after that. He became moodier and more negative, especially around me. He'd make snide remarks about how some people have all the luck, or imply that James only got the promotion because of office politics. I tried to give Mark the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just going through a rough patch and feeling a bit envious. I encouraged James to spend some one-on-one time with Mark, thinking it might cheer him up, but things only seemed to get worse. Mark started making subtle digs at me when James wasn't around. He'd say things like, "It must be nice to have a sugar daddy to take care of you." Or, "I'm sure James's money makes up for any shortcomings in your relationship." I was shocked and hurt, but I didn't want to cause drama by telling James. I figured Mark was just lashing out and would get over it eventually. But then things escalated in a way I could have never predicted. It was a Saturday afternoon and James and I were having a lazy day at home. Mark called and asked if he could come over and hang out. James agreed, and about 30 minutes later, Mark showed up. As soon as he walked in, I could tell something was off. Mark seemed jittery and kept glancing around nervously. He suggested we all play a board game, so we set up in the living room. Partway through the game, Mark said he needed to use the bathroom. He was gone for quite a while, long enough that James and I exchanged puzzled looks. When Mark finally came back, he seemed even more on edge. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister asking if I could call her. I excused myself and went to our bedroom to make the call. As I was chatting with my sister, I heard raised voices coming from the living room. Concerned, I quickly ended the call and went to see what was going on. I walked in to find James and Mark in a heated argument. James looked furious, while Mark had an expression of fake innocence on his face. "What's going on?" I asked. James turned to me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "Sarah, did you take money from my wallet?" I was completely blindsided. "What? Of course not. Why would you think that?" Mark jumped in before James could respond. "I saw her, man. When she went to the bedroom earlier, I noticed your wallet on the side table. I glanced over and saw her slip some bills out of it before she made her call." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "That's a lie. I never touched James' wallet. I went to the bedroom to talk to my sister, that's all." James looked between us, clearly unsure what to believe. "There's $200 missing from my wallet. I counted it this morning, so I know exactly how much was in there." "James, I swear I didn't take anything," I pleaded. "Mark is lying, and I don't know why, but he is." Mark put on an expression of wounded pride. "Why would I lie about this? I'm just looking out for my best friend. I didn't want to say anything, but when I saw her take the money, I knew I had to speak up." I was reeling. How could this be happening? Why was Mark trying to frame me? "This is insane," I said. "James, you know I would never steal from you. We share everything. Why would I need to take money from your wallet?" James ran his hand through his hair, looking stressed and conflicted. "I don't know what to think. The money is definitely missing, and Mark says he saw you take it." "Check my purse," I said. "Check my pockets. I don't have the money because I never took it." James hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, let's all calm down and figure this out. Sarah, I'm going to look in your purse. Is that all right?" "Of course, check anywhere you want. I have nothing to hide." James went to where my purse was hanging by the door and started looking through it. I saw his shoulders stiffen, and my heart dropped. He turned around slowly, holding up several $20 bills. "Sarah, why is this in your purse?" I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. That's not possible. I didn't put that there, James. You have to believe me." Mark shook his head sadly. "I can't believe you're still denying. Just admit what you did." I whirled on Mark. "You did this. You must have planted that money in my purse when you went to the bathroom earlier. James, please, you know I would never steal from you. James looked torn. I don't know what to think right now. I need some time to process this. Mark, I think you should go. Mark started to protest, but James cut him off. Please, just go. I'll call you later. After Mark left, James and I had a long, painful conversation. I could tell he wanted to believe me, but the evidence was hard to ignore. I racked my brain trying to think of any way to prove my innocence. What about security cameras? I suggested it desperately. Don't we still have that old natty cam packed away somewhere? Maybe we can set it up and catch Mark in the act if he tries something like this again. James nodded slowly. That's not a bad idea. I hate the thought of needing to do something like that. But I also hate not knowing what really happened. James told Mark he needed some space and didn't invite him over for the next couple weeks. Things were tense between us during that time. I could tell James was still unsure what to believe, and it broke my heart. Finally, after about 2 weeks, James called Mark and invited him over to watch a football game. I made myself scarce, saying I had plans with a friend. In reality, I waited anxiously at a nearby coffee shop, watching the camera feed on my phone. For the first hour or so, nothing seemed amiss. James and Mark were just watching the game and chatting. But then James got up to use the bathroom. As soon as he was out of sight, I saw Mark start to look around. He got up and walked over to where James had left his phone on the coffee table. My heart racing, I watched as Mark picked up the phone and started tapping at the screen. He appeared to be texting someone. Then he set the phone down and quickly returned to his seat, just as James came back into the room. I couldn't believe what I just witnessed. I texted James. Check your sent messages. I think Mark just texted someone from your phone. A few minutes later, I saw James glance at his phone with a confused expression. He typed something, then set the phone down. My own phone buzzed with a text from him. You're right. There's a message sent to you that I didn't write. It says, hey babe, can you grab some beer on your way home? What's going on? I quickly filled James in on what I'd seen on the camera. His reply was terse. Come home now. When I got to the house, I could hear James confronting Mark in the living room. I saw you on the nanny cam, Mark, James was saying, and I saw that message you sent pretending to be me. What the hell is going on? Why are you trying to cause problems between me and Sarah? Mark sputtered, trying to come up with an explanation. I was just joking around, man. I thought it would be funny to prank you guys a little. Funny? James' voice cold with anger. You call framing my wife for theft a prank? Do you have any idea the problems you've caused? I walked into the room. Mark's face went pale when he saw me. Game over, Mark, I said. We know what you did. The only question is why. Mark's demeanor suddenly changed. His face twisted with bitterness. Why? Because it's not fair. We were supposed to be living the high life together, James. But then you had to go and marry her. And now you're too busy playing house to hang out with your real friends. And then you get this cushy promotion while I'm stuck in a dead-end job? It's not right. James looked stunned. Mark, I had no idea you felt that way. But trying to sabotage my marriage? That's completely unacceptable. I think you should leave now. Fine, Mark spat. But don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made. After Mark stormed out, James turned to me with anguish in his eyes. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you from the start. Can you ever forgive me? I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Of course I can forgive you. You were put in an impossible situation. I'm just glad the truth finally came out. James pulled me into a tight hug. I love you so much. I promise I'll never doubt you again. Over the next few days, we pieced together more of what had happened. James checked our credit card statements and found some suspicious charges from the day that Mark had initially framed me. It seemed Mark had stolen James' credit card info and made some purchases, likely assuming James would blame me for those as well. We also realized that some other small items had gone missing from our home over the past few months, things we had attributed to absent-mindedness but now suspected Mark had stolen. I just can't believe he would do all this, James said, shaking his head in disbelief. We've been friends for so long. How did I not see what kind of person he really was? I squeezed his hand. Don't blame yourself. Mark clearly has some serious issues that have nothing to do with you. You were a good friend to him. He's the only one who threw that away. We debated whether to go to the police about Mark's actions. In the end, we decided to give him one chance to make things right. James called Mark and laid out everything we knew. He said if Mark returned everything he'd stolen and paid back the fraudulent credit card charges, we wouldn't press charges. Mark initially tried to deny everything, But when James mentioned the video evidence, he crumbled. He admitted to framing me, stealing the items from our home, and using James' credit card info. He broke down crying, saying he'd been in a bad place mentally and financially and had convinced himself that James owed him somehow. While I was glad to get a confession, I wasn't as moved by Mark's tears as James seemed to be. I couldn't help but remember how smugly he had framed me, how he had tried to drive a wedge between me and my husband. Those weren't the actions of someone who simply made a mistake. They were calculated and cruel. I think we need to take some serious steps to protect ourselves, I told James after he got off the phone with Mark. I don't trust that he won't try something like this again. James nodded, looking tired. You're right. I'll call the credit card company and have them issue new cards. I think we should change the locks just to be safe. We should also consider a restraining order, I suggested. I know he was your friend, but after everything he's done, I don't feel safe with him anywhere near us or our home. James was quiet for a moment, then nodded. You're right. It's hard to accept, but Mark isn't the person I thought he was. Our safety has to come first. Over the next week, we took steps to secure our home and finances. We changed the locks, set up a security system, and got new credit cards. We also spoke to a lawyer about the process of getting a restraining order against Mark. Mark did follow through on returning the stolen items and repaying the fraudulent charges. He continued to send James lengthy apologetic messages, begging for another chance at friendship, but James stood firm in his decision to cut ties. I keep thinking about what might have happened if we hadn't caught him, James told me one night as we were getting ready for bed. He could have completely destroyed our marriage, all because he was jealous and felt entitled to my success. It makes me sick to think about. I hugged him tightly, but he didn't succeed. We're stronger than ever. And now we know that we can trust each other, even in the face of something crazy like this. James kissed the top of my head. You're amazing, you know that? I don't know how you can be so forgiving after what he put you through. I shrugged. I'm not really forgiving him. I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. I'm not going to let what he did poison our happiness either. He's out of our lives now. We can move forward. And that's what we've been doing. It hasn't always been easy. There had been moments of lingering doubt or fear. The first time we had people over, I caught myself watching our guests like a hawk, half expecting someone to try to plant evidence or steal from us. James admitted that he had similar moments of paranoia. But slowly, we've been rebuilding our sense of security and trust. We've been more open with each other, sharing our fears and doubts instead of letting them fester. In a way, going through this ordeal has made our relationship stronger than ever. We've also taken steps to expand our social circle, realizing how isolated we had become with Mark as such a constant presence in our lives. We've reconnected with old friends and made new ones, creating a support network that doesn't rely on just one person. As for Mark, we haven't heard from him directly since James told him to stop contacting us. We did hear through mutual acquaintances that he moved to another state for a new job. Part of me hopes he's gotten help and turned his life around. A larger part of me is simply relieved to have him far away from us. Looking back on everything that happened, I'm still amazed at how quickly our lives were turned upside down. But I'm also proud of how we handled it. We faced the challenge together and came out stronger on the other side. If there's one lesson I've taken from all this, it's the importance of trusting your instincts. I had doubts about Mark's behavior long before things escalated, but I brushed him aside because I didn't want to cause problems. I won't make that mistake again. I'm sharing the story in hopes that it might help someone else who finds themselves in a similar situation. Trust your gut. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if it means rocking the boat. And remember that a true partner will stand by you and hear you out, even when things seem impossible to believe. James and I are moving forward with our lives. We're back to house hunting, planning for our future together, but we're doing it with open eyes now, aware that sometimes the biggest threats can come from where you least expect them. We're committed to facing whatever challenges come our way as a team. After all, we've already proven that together, we can overcome anything. Here are my thoughts about the story. First off, can we talk about Mark? This dude started off seeming like the ultimate bro, you know? Like the kind of friend we all wish we had. The guy who's always down for a good time, ready with the joke, and has your back no matter what. I was genuinely vibing with him in the beginning. Those camping trip stories, the Super Bowl traditions, that's friendship goals right there. But man, did that turn sour faster than milk left out in the sun. It's like watching one of those nature documentaries where the cute, fluffy animal suddenly turns into a vicious predator. The way Mark slowly morphed from best bud to jealous psycho was both fascinating and terrifying to watch unfold. Humans are morbidly fascinating creatures. Wait, no, that makes me sound like some extraterrestrial alien. And James? Sweet, loyal James. I swear, this guy's heart is probably made of marshmallows or something. The way he stood by Mark through thick and thin, even canceling his anniversary plans, that's some next level loyalty right there. But it also kind of makes me want to reach through the screen and give him a good shake. Like, dude, open your eyes. Trust your wife. Mark wasn't even being slick about it. He was suspicious as all hell. Now let's talk about our girl Sarah for a second. I gotta give her props for being so understanding at first. I mean, when your husband's bestie is constantly third wheeling, most people would lose their cool way faster. But Sarah, she was out here playing the long game, trying to be supportive and give Mark the benefit of the doubt. That takes some serious patience, folks. But here's where I started yelling at my screen. Sarah, honey, why didn't you tell James about Mark's snarky comments sooner? I get not wanting to cause drama, but come on, those sugar daddy remarks? That's some grade A BS right there that needed to be shut down before it even started. I gotta say, I have mad respect for Sarah for sharing the story. It can't be easy to put all that out there, to admit to the world that your life went sideways in such a spectacular fashion. But stories like these are important, you know? They remind us that life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and that sometimes the people we trust the most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. Only God knows what I'd do if I was in a situation like this. Absolute insanity, I tell you. Absolute insanity.
Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.